Tonight, we'll be looking at Uganda's journey to middle income status 2020, and we'll be trying to assess the role of graft or corruption towards how it will impact that journey. Earlier in the week, we had an economic summit, Uganda Economic Summit, hosted by NTV, where we had serious discussions on what the country needs to do to move towards middle income status. We also had an East African Economic Conference organized by Accord, I think, that took place also during the week. But also continued to watch developments in Kasese and elsewhere in the country that also contribute to the discussion of middle income status. We've also had a reversal from the Gambia, from a celebration now to what appears like a reversal. Yaya Jammeh saying he is not quite sure about the outcome of the results, but a concession and a change which is looming in Ghana after the president considered that he lost this election and wrote one of the most intriguing concession speeches. People have been debating whether he's African or not. Let me introduce the people I have in studio, starting with one absentee. Onapito Ekomoloit is watching us from Asalata village, somewhere in Amuria. He's not in studio tonight. But let me introduce the other people that I have in studio. To start with, Deputy Inspector General of Government, George Pamgemerere.
Good evening, viewers.
It's a very long time since we last had you in this studio.
Yeah, 2 years. I think it was 2 years.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
We need to be finding out what your office has been up to over the last 2 years.
Loads and loads. Yeah.
From the Uganda Debt Network, we have Mr. Tumwebaze Patrick. You're most welcome, sir.
Good evening, viewers.
We have Godba Tumushabi. He's not new to most of our viewers. Godba does many things, but we'll limit ourselves to him being a policy analyst.
Looking after bananas.
He does many things. He's into grazing goats. He grows bananas. He works with Forward Uganda. He works with Bliss.
Yes.
And so many other things. Goodbye. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Charles. Good evening, colleagues, and good evening, our viewers.
And the last guest I'll introduce tonight is Julius Kapwepwe Mishambi, who is also from the Uganda Debt Network. You're most welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
The question which I want to put to Godba. We've been debating and watching the discussion. Midweek, people are asking themselves the bigger question, which is, now today is the 11th of December. For 41 days, the main national university has been closed. And we're watching, and life seems to be going on normal. On 27th November, you had that major, I don't know what to call it, a clash, a skirmish, an assault, or an attack at the cultural leader's palace in Kasese, who remains incarcerated. One of the underlying issues, we're told, is the feeling that the people of that region feel left out of the economic discussion in this country. You have the president yesterday running across a river that's drying up because of climate change concerns. You have accidents. You have so many things happening at the same time. And we are just ending. We ended on 9th, the anti-corruption week. These form different facets that should inform the debate of the country's journey towards middle income status. How, in your view, do we fit in? Are we able to consolidate this discussion and be able to determine that going to middle income status is not just a declaration by government, that now a majority of Ugandans make $1,033 a year, or our GDP is at that level?
No. I actually believe that any discussion, whether of middle income, whether of, transformation generally, has to be divided into different facets, and I can point just 3 specific ones. One is that in my profession, really, which having moved out from traditional legal practice, my profession is policy analysis, and in that profession, the most important thing is to identify the policy problem that we are dealing with. So if you are thinking of moving towards middle income, growing the economy, you want to say, okay, for the last 54 years of independence, as a country, we've been growing the economy, we've been running the economy, we've had so many mistakes. So if you see today, then you say, where are we now? Why haven't we moved to where we want to go? And I can say that from my own analysis is that while you can point to specific problems of a social nature, of an economic nature, of an environmental nature, right now our problem as a country is a governance problem. It's a political problem. So the river that the president was visiting is drying up because for the last almost 3 decades, we have failed to implement the laws and the policies that we have put in place. And we have several of them, right from 1992, 1994, when we adopted the National Environment Action Plan. Very, very clear, specific actions. Government agencies try, they do this and that, they have made their attempts. But the big things that you want to do to be able to put back the integrity of our ecological system and the environment, government is not able to do them because most of the challenges is political. So the encroachment on forest reserves, the encroachment on wetlands, the degradation of fragile ecosystems. Most of that happens because the political process is so convoluted that the agencies of government are not able to do what they need to do.
Someone would raise a counter-argument and say that why you have a problem is that since 1992 to 2016, the population of the country has doubled, or more than doubled. That the economic realities people find themselves in are such that considerations about environmental protection and enforcement of the laws themselves becomes problematic.
Yep.
That you cannot necessarily simply rely on policing the country to achieve what you want.
No, at the individual level, at the individual level, at the household level, the issues you raise in terms of livelihoods and survival are important. But you see, at the national level, you want a country and a leadership that understands that the nature of our economic challenge today, because Uganda is a nature-based economy, we entirely depend on the mercy of nature. The day nature decides to get angry, you are stuck. You can't feed your people. You can't find things to export and make money. So that's why, even as population growth, it's a problem. We haven't dealt with it. But as a country, you have to have a leadership that understands that you have to do whatever you need to do, whether it is policing, whether it is providing incentives for people to do certain things, that you have to preserve the integrity of the ecosystems, because the economy of this country is entirely dependent on how the ecosystem behaves. You can be sure that I've been looking at some of the data.
Is that a function of policing or of enforcing policy, or is it a function of doing the things you need to do? Making the right kind of investment.
Actually, if I can quickly run through this, I normally share with people how you secure compliance to get society to do the right things. The first, one of the first things you look at is what we call rationality. You assume that people are rational; they are going to do the right things. When people are not rational, and I think in this country many of us are not rational, then you rely on what we call ethics and morality. So you assume that people will not do certain things because they are unethical, they are immoral. If there is immorality, then you want to ask the church and the religion and the mosque to intensify their prayers. But in this country, I think that people no longer even listen to the church.
We're filling churches to the brim. It's a
Sunday, they go there, but I wanted to end by saying that once that fails, that is when you go to what we call compliance and law enforcement. It is the state that has to come in and make sure that every citizen respects the law, respects the rules that have been put in place. And I think we are failing on all the three.
Okay. If you go back a little bit to the question of graft, and I want to come to you, Julius. You guys spend all your time tracking date.
Debt and other public resources.
One of the biggest contributors to date is money we borrow, fail to put to the right use, and steal it. And one of the major debates that have been going on intergovernmentally, with intra-government, is it intra-government or yes, intra-government, I think, is the question of Uganda's debt today. Is it sustainable? When you make the split between the external debt or foreign debt and the domestic debt. What does your tracking say?
Our indication as Uganda Debt Network is that we are acquiring debt perhaps too fast than maybe is necessary, first and foremost. Why does it become perhaps unnecessary? One aspect is that as a country, some of us believe that we have quite sufficient resources to meet even our budget needs. The challenge is, where are those resources being prioritized? So the issue of prioritization becomes one of the... We have tended as a country to be kind of consumer-oriented, just consumption, as opposed to having a lot of investment into production, so that even with the little, once it is plowed, then you are able to achieve even much more in terms of output and eventual outcomes. Therefore, to that extent, we seem to be more attracted to someone else's money, which itself has an inherent danger, because like in the case of Uganda now, some people will argue that the debt is still sustainable, yes, but the rate at which that acquisition is happening is going to be unsustainable. The other bit is that for me, as Uganda Debt Network, when we look through the statistics, but also look at the other considerations, like domestic debt, as you have said, foreign acquired debt, but also you have debt, corporate debt, where, say, government institutions have not cleared their areas, but also you have like pensioners whom for a long time have not been cleared, as well as what we call recoverable debt. If you take an example of the oil companies, upon investment and upon production and flow of oil resources, they'll be expected to net off their initial investment. So that is part of the public debt, and that takes us to about over 45% of Uganda's GDP, while some other people were discounting some of those the areas and other elements of debt, take you to about 35. As far as
what is
is
the health
concerned,
level of debt?
the health level ideally should be 0. That for you rely on somebody's money is not healthy. In the case of what IMF has given as a guide,
yes,
what the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, has given as a guide, it should be worst case up to about 50% of your GDP. In Uganda, we already are between 45 and 50, even though some people think otherwise.
What does that mean for this promise of the journey to middle income?
The challenge you are going to have, as you correctly stated, is that you are borrowing, but you are not putting, first of all, full utilization the resources that you have borrowed, yet those resources are attracting interest. You have to do amortization and the payback, which becomes a big cost to the economy, and of course the opportunity cost foregone. If, for instance, we took the financial year 16-17 as a case, Uganda was a quarter of the national budget, which national budget is about 26.4 trillion shillings. A quarter of that money is going to debt payback. As
about 6.8 trillion, I think.
Yes,
6.7.
but a huge chunk of that money is actually being borrowed. So you are borrowing here to go and pay off another debt.
Okay. So you borrow from God but pay
yes, to pay Patrick,
Okay.
which becomes the challenge. And then the other implication, of course, is that you have borrowed, say, in the case of roads, but you have only used a quarter of that money, perhaps. And
to do the roads.
therefore, the economic opportunities foregone simply become exponential, and as a country you're not moving as fast into the middle income status, for instance, as would be required, and as that the opportunities are available.
I'll come back to you in a moment. Let me turn to the IGG. I'm told the correct acronym for your office is actually IG.
Yes,
Not
the institution is called Inspectorate of Government.
Yes.
Its head is the Inspector General of Government, IGG.
IGG, so
Yes.
this is correct. You just ended the anti-corruption week. Let me start with a broader question. What was your major focus? And number two is, if you track the period of the existence of the institution as the lead government agency in the fight against corruption, are you making the right progress?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll come to that question, but I want to just give me a moment to address what Godba, where you started.
Yes, sure.
About so many events that have happened in the last few weeks. I think the question you're asking is actually a description of nature. That is a phenomena of nature. A lot of pieces moving probably in different directions. I mean, life is full of contradictions. And this just doesn't happen only in Uganda. It actually happens all over the world. You've had it places, United States, a country which everybody looks up to. There is this, what was that storm, Katrina. There's Katrina going on, the Congress is sitting, and so on. So I think that the issue really we should be focusing on is whether we have people with the capability to actually manage contradictions of life. And I think that's really the question. Because even us as individuals, when you get out of your house, you never really know what will be thrown at you that day. You could have this plan, you've drawn it up, you get into your office and something else happened, somebody has died, and so on. So I think what Godba is describing is actually a movement of pieces, which is a description of human nature. And I think that what we should pride in ourselves in is that, yes, there is a system, there is a government in place that can actually operate while all these contradictions are going on. There's an attack here, there is a famine somewhere, there is a storm, and so on. So I think that's the benefit that we have in a stable country like Uganda at the moment, that a government can stay in place, it can deal with the contradictions in the parallel as the pieces move in. Because I just wanted to make that clear, that it's important that we get the right people with the capability and skill to manage life's contradictions at the top. And I think that is where Uganda is. That because when you list those items, you know, if it is a weak government, it would have fallen. But the fact that there's a solution, you know, the people who are suffering hunger, the food is being delivered, issues that are legal, people are in court. What was the other one? You know, the issue of climate change, I think a solution will be found. The university being closed, there's a commission of inquiry going on. So you can actually see that there is a system addressing all the moving pieces, which are probably moving in contradiction. That said, I can now turn to the issue of the Anti-Corruption Week. Anti-Corruption Week has been a huge, huge success. This 9th of December was a date that was designated by the United Nations by Resolution 58/4 of 31st of October 2003. And it was a date that was set up to mobilize the whole world to reflect on the impact and effects of corruption. In Uganda, we have, of course, we flagged off the Anti-Corruption Week on Friday, the other Friday, I think it was 2nd of December. His Excellency the Vice President flagged off a march with a band. We've been consulting, going around the country in what we call the boardroom sessions. So we've been, this year we've actually focused on up-country sessions. We've been to Lira, we've been to Mbara, we've been to Sironko, we've been to all these places just talking to the people. What are they saying? We've also been to the media, the Vision, Radio 1, and so on. Basically discussing the issue of how we can build synergies in the fight against corruption. And the response has been tremendous. In our up-country visits, we found that there is a yearning in the country for awareness. People want to know more. How is the country governed? How do they deal with the issues of corruption and so on, and maladministration and issues like that? So we have, one of the conclusions we've drawn is we're going to invest more in public awareness, just informing people what we're doing, governance issues, and so on, creating awareness around the dangers of corruption. Regarding the journey,
we're making an assumption, Mr. Ijiji, that people are not aware of the dangers of corruption. Is it your finding that people are not aware of the dangers of corruption? Or is it that people seem to have adjusted themselves to accepting that corruption is somewhat a way of life?
I think it's a combination of both. It's a combination of both. What we found is that the people would like systems to work. That is a given. Everywhere we've gone, people would like to go to hospital and be attended to. They would like to take their children to schools, and the schools their children are attended to. They would like to go to health centers and find attendants. So the yearning for governance and effective governance is there, and the people are aware of it. But with regard to corruption, it is true that I think there is a way in which people have accepted corruption as a way of life. The citizens. And that's why we really need to rush and sensitize the citizens, particularly the young generation, which is the majority in the country, about the dangers of corruption. Because there are those who really do not know. You saw the survey, I think it's you people who launched it, showing that 58%, I think, of people below 30 have basically say we don't really care, we must get rich by whatever means. So there is an urgency around this of creating awareness in the country about the dangers of corruption, particularly in the young generation. But also, the people would like to see the adults who are practicing corruption being punished. So there's that two-pronged response. But this whole awareness campaign is part of the prevention drive that the Inspectorate of Government.
Can corruption be prevented from experience?
It can.
How?
Well, corruption can be prevented. Actually, we really wish we could prevent corruption. I think there are many ways in which I can tell you, for instance, what we have, the Inspectorate of Government has in stock, the plan that we've adopted to tackle the issue of corruption. We have a 5-point plan. Point number 1, we would like to strengthen our capability to detect, to investigate, to prosecute, and to recover assets. These 4 points. And that means better training for ourselves. We've already set up what we call the Special Investigation Unit, because we believe if you do all this, you will deter those who are inclined to be corrupt from doing so. Number 2, we would like to leverage what they call the ombudsman function. Now, ombudsman has to do with the governance, because we find that right now, I mean, just the previous year, we received more than 2,500 what you describe as small complaints. Citizens, going to our offices. We have 16 regional offices around the country. My name has been deleted from payroll. I didn't receive my salary. I've been to a health clinic and there's been no person and so on. So we're finding that citizens are running to the Inspectorate of Government as a first point of call. And yet, we should actually be focusing on the big issues of the country. So what we are saying let us try to set up effective complaints handling mechanisms across government. So that if your name has been deleted from payroll, you shouldn't run to the Inspectorate of Government. You should go to the cow.
There is something I'll come to on that later, which is one of the major contradictions in this country that you talked about. The contradiction that in 2005, this country passed an Access to Information Act that hardly gets implemented. When India is closing in on 10 million access to information complaints registered, when they passed the Access to Information Act at the same time as Uganda did. Uganda is hardly talking about 100 access to information complaints, and the response mechanism is difficult. The other question is, which actually has something directly to do with your office, is you have a Leadership Code Act.
Yes.
Previously, the Leadership Code Act allowed you not only to receive declarations of assets and liabilities of people in public office, but actually also to make that information public. And along the way, that has been changed. So when you say you have that 5-point program, one of them is the first one you said is
improve our capability
to detect,
investigate,
and
prosecute,
you are not
and
able,
recover assets.
Yes, you're not able to allow Ugandans, maybe through the media or through your own publication, that Godba has been appointed RDC. He comes into office with this ABCD. 2 years later, because it's a 2-year reporting cycle, 2 years later, Godba is able to come back to you and say, this is what I have as my assets, and these are my liabilities. Then Julius or Charles can come to you and say, no, wait a moment. Godba bought a building in the center of town the other day. It is not among the things he has declared. Godba owns something else. He acquired it in the time he's been in office. It's not among the things you have. Do you think there is a contradiction there? But I'll come back to that in a moment. Let me first bring in Patrick for a moment. Patrick, you listen to the three gentlemen make their different arguments. The bigger question is, how do all these different pieces take a country like Uganda to middle income status at the desired target of 2020?
Thank you for that question. I think let's first understand what we are talking about, especially when we talk about corruption. The 2015 Afrobarometer report ranked Uganda 139th of 167 countries surveyed.
Down from 142.
Yes.
Yes, okay, so we...
From the, yeah.
But what I'm trying to do is the National Governance Baseline Survey report 2014 indicates that on average we lose about $250 million per year. World Bank puts it higher at 310 million, which is about, in Uganda shillings, about 900 for 250, and then 1.2 billion Uganda shillings. Now, this is money which is being lost annually. Now, we go down. Our dossier, which we launched the other day as Uganda Data Network, just put one organization, one agency of the government, UNRWA. In 5 years, 4 trillion is lost. 4 trillion Uganda shillings. Now, if you look at that in terms of the budget, the national budget, that's about 5% of the 2016-2017 budget when you remove that money due for taxes Julius talked about. Now, when it reaches at that level, I feel we cannot reach if we continue with that trend, with also increasing the debt increasing, you're also borrowing money, pay the debt, and I think that's why I have a problem. Yeah, so to me, unless those things are checked, and also I want to talk to something briefly on the Deputy IGG talked about. Yes, we can stop corruption. Because you see, what is happening now is people look at the demand side. They are not talking about government, about police, about, I don't know, government agencies. But they are forgetting the supply side, which is the private sector. We need also to bring the private sector on board and also take them to understand their constitutional responsibility to fight corruption, because it takes two to tango. Yeah.
Okay, so you think our journey to middle income is threatened because of some of these contradictions?
Yeah, sure. If the trend goes on like that, it is very threatened.
And if nothing was done. But I think you can see, I had listed for you that our 5-point plan, which is actually working, you know?
Is it?
Yeah, you stopped me at number 2. I was going to number 3. Number 3, you jumped on number 3. Number 3 was about the leadership code, which we've automated. You've seen the automation. So we're on a journey of actually improving access to information, because you see, when you automate information about wealth, then it makes verification easier. So that was our number 3.
I'm personally interested in that. What is the automation giving us as citizens?
Automation, number 1, obviously, we have about 25,000 leaders, people who are categorized as leaders in the country. Now, in the past, they used to fill forms. I think a form is about 8 to 10 pages. So in the Inspectorate of Government, we have piles and piles of forms, you can imagine, over the years. So if you want to verify information, that would be difficult, even if there was access to information. And the law provides for access to information in that you are required to fill a form, but unfortunately the form was not prescribed by law. I think that's been the main hindrance, but access should be available. But what we've seen, we have an example of Argentina. Argentina automated asset declaration, wealth declaration, and they've built the capacity in their system to throw up contradictions, year to year. So when you assess, it can throw up the contradiction, and those can be investigated. So we think we are on that journey.
Go to number 5 so that we take a break.
Yes, number 4. Number 4 was about syndicating amongst anti-corruption agencies working together. Because remember, we used to operate in silos. Auditor General does his bit, PPDA do their bit, IG do their bit. Now, we are fighting back the syndicated corruption, which is the grand corruption we are fighting. So we are now operating, and if you see, during this week we've cooperated. And finally, it is the public awareness. We are enlisting the media, the public, civil society. We want to join hands and confront this scourge of corruption. If we do those 5, we're going to reach a bit.
I'll tell you something as we take the break.
Thank you.
What happens in India is every leader, they fill in an affidavit. If a member of the Lok Sabha or the Raj Sabha, you fill in an affidavit. It indicates, among others, your assets, your liabilities, also your criminal record, if you have a criminal record. And it doesn't need a special form. You sit on a computer or on your phone, as we have smartphones today, where you have access to Wi-Fi or you have some MBs, and you can download the file of George Bamgemerei and read. Any citizen can, and they know. Now, why the IGG here, the IGG here, and the government of Uganda is so worried about people knowing what people know, what people own? Yes, actually, knowing what people know, people know own. It's something I can't put my head around. But let's take a break. We'll pick this discussion up in a moment. You're still watching The Fourth Estate. Jose Nwabine, watching us from Kavola Liantonde, says corruption is a struggle that needs a protracted people's struggle to be dealt with. Jose is saying it needs a protracted people's struggle to roll back corruption. Let me refer to a sad incident that happened this weekend. The death of the former Director of Planning at Kampala Capital City Authority, Agaba. And someone posted something, I don't know if it's real or imagined, who says he saw the car zoom past, then an accident, and went as any curious person, a big car associated with big people. But the moment you're involved in the accident, like that, the other processes that handle you do not recognize who you are, which is the reason that every person, wherever they are, must invest in making systems work so that they benefit them when they are the most vulnerable. And this couldn't come into play because these people are vulnerable. Nobody knows your title, nobody knows your position, nobody knows who you know at that stage, which is something I think people in positions of authority never pay attention to when they're still powerful people, which is a sad incident. God, but let me come back to you. We started with you. You have listened to Julius, you listened to Patrick, you listened to George. Where are we on our journey? You still think it's a leadership?
I'm struck by George's submission because, you see, one of the things that amazes me in this country is that every time you listen to a government official, they speak as if they have started running government. You know, it's like, so IGG will tell you the things they are doing.
They are planning to do.
They are planning to do and how life will change. If you talk to Minister of Finance and you said our roads are crumbling the way they used to do, they will tell you, oh, we are about to sign a contract with the World Bank. You talk to Minister of Education and say, our curriculum, the children, the kinds of things they are running, they say, we are revising the curriculum. And it's like all of them forget that we have had 54 years of independence and over 30 years of a government that has been in power. For me, that amazes me. And I always say that I think that one of our challenges as a people is that Africans, we are not impatient with ourselves. I think we we are always patient with we sympathize with ourselves too much. And yet the world is running so fast, the challenges we face are so immense. If you think of the opportunities lost, if you think even where you started, the president visiting that river that is drying up, if you see the things we've done to destroy the environment to where it is now, and then someone will say, oh, we have adopted a new environment plan, something. So you kind of like, are we trying to put ourselves in a comfortable zone and convince ourselves that actually we have made as much progress as we should have made? So if you ask me, IGG, I think it's from 1989. That's when I think the original statute was enacted. So you'd imagine that the institution of the IGG has been reconfigured and perfected, and the institution has been really put in place, and now we would be on cruising altitude.
Which we are, I think.
I don't know.
We on take
maybe we are.
So it's something that the 5-man office. Now we have 500 people in 16 regional offices.
And so 1,500 people, 15 regional, 500 people.
500 people from 1989.
500 people, 15 regional 16 regional offices. But for us, what we know is that the steering has moved from millions to billions. So then it's like, oh, so.
And that's why we've come up with that plan. We've come up with a plan, which we think is actually working. This plan is our silver bullet. And I think we're going to deliver some scalps.
And I think, George, the point that I'm making is that I know that in many public offices in this country, there are men and women who are trying to work very hard. But several of them, you get to them and say, why are these things happening? Why can't we contain them? They will tell you, man, these things are very difficult. So they actually, in private, they appreciate the limitations. Some of them are political limitations. Some of them are leadership limitations. So there is that acknowledgement, which is normally in private. It is not in the public domain. When public officials come and talk in public like this, they are more likely to, you put a gross picture and you listen to someone and you feel like things are moving, but around me, I don't feel like things are shifting. That's really the challenge for me.
Julian, I'll come back to you in a moment. Let me first go back to the IGG and ask a question. One of my colleague, Onapito, mentions this all the time. We're on the show. He says, are there people having sleepless nights, especially people working in government, about these, sometimes the inability to do anything, to change anything significantly? If Godba says the IG statute, 1998.
Yes, 1989 actually.
89.
Yeah.
When you got your office tomorrow, Monday, and you're having a discussion as office, or maybe you have called, I don't know how many of the 500 hands that you have, that will be 1,000 hands, that you have to be tracking corruption in the country. And you read a headline in the newspaper that a 50-kilometer road is the world's most expensive road because each kilometer has been procured at $10 million US. Are there people banging tables and getting frustrated and feeling angry in your office?
I think it's actually, the question you're asking is where we started. About the moving pieces, which is human nature. Moving pieces. Governance, moving pieces. And depending on your vantage point, there will be a person who sees the whole picture. If you say the president, you see the whole picture, But Godba, as I told you, for him, he says he's a policy man. So he looks at policy from a policy perspective. Is there a policy fix for something? For us, from the Inspectorate of Government, I will tell you, we get concerned if there's something that outrageous that's happening. Because that's our work, and it's not a job. It is a persuasion. It's something we feel we are called to do, to fix issues. But there are missing pieces. And I told you that, yes, we get cases of, somebody in Kaberamaido saying, I have not been paid my salary for 8 months. I'm a school teacher. When you read a complaint like that, I mean, you feel outraged and say, why hasn't this happened? And we immediately swing into action. Ask our office in Soroti, can you find out what this why is this person not paid for 8 months and they've been working faithfully? So what I'm saying is that when issues are not working, we get concerned. And that's why we have this 5-point plan, which we've distilled over a long time, saying, how do we fix, in general, how do we fix these problems within our limitations? I mean, we have our limitations of resources and
I can see this guy is laughing. I don't think laughing at the 5-point plan.
The reason for me and the reason I'm starting at this is because George knows that if I went and picked because I document most of these documents, which strategy has been adopted, the anti-corruption strategy, this strategy. So for the IGG, you'll find several of them. For the Ministry of Ethics and Integrity, you'll find several of them. And then you'll go to other places. And you know, for me as a researcher, it makes good reading. And I analyze, I say, okay, government of Uganda is trying.
You're not talking about those, the documentation. Yeah. The other day we were having a discussion in our newsroom about the new committee government has established to investigate the problems of Makerere.
Yeah.
So we're trying to write a story out of it. And one of my colleagues came up and said, but what story are we going to write? So he pulled out 3 previous reports.
Yes.
And we are reading paragraphs that read exactly the same. And they've been gathering dust. And we are saying, so what is this new committee going to find out? And we're feeling sorry for Dr. Aberu Ndaire and his team to say, what are they going to look for that is already not available? So for the IGG, you're fighting graft. You have the IGG. You have the Auditor General. If there's a problem in health, you have Dr. Diana Twine committee supposed to deal with that. If you have a problem in the lands area, you have this office of Gertrude Njoba. Yes, Gertrude Njoba in State House dealing with the same problem. If it is in education, you establish a commission of inquiry. And people are wondering, you're putting
and George calls them moving pieces.
Those
pieces are
but also to be fair to government effort, I think it is imperative that we inform the viewers and also inform ourselves that some investment on the government side I am not a Fono Pondo, but I know because
there's nothing wrong with
I'm a Ugandan citizen, and I know that quite an investment has been done in a number of accountability sector institutions. And even looking at, for instance, Parliament, look at like what the Kosase ladies and gentlemen have done in terms of recovery of billions from the Chinese and some of these firms. Look at the quite impressive legislation, at least framework that is in place, and a whole cocktail of them. But look at the Public Finance and Management Act, for instance, of 2015 as a case. It gives us very, very good ground and higher ground where we can begin standing, and we really cause a dent on some of the mischief that we see in public places.
A multiplicity of laws.
That is on the law side.
On a multiplicity of institutions. Is it reflected in the fight against graft? And I'll come to you as Uganda Debt Network. At the time Uganda Debt Network was established, it was at the time of the Paris Club of and donor relief. Highly indebted poor countries. We have gone through 5 debt relief cycles. What we have harvested out of that is our debt has gone back to where it was before we were forgiven the first time.
It has already surpassed
where it has surpassed. Before we were forgiven the very first time. So the question would be, even as civil society, have you hit a dead end in terms of creating that frustration that Godba talks about? To create that hunger among the population that things can actually change for the better.
But Charles, we are missing the point. Julius, we need to capture what Julius has just said. I need to reinforce what you've just been saying. Julius has actually been listing to you the impact of these initiatives. Let me tell you, there are countries in the world who do not care about problems like this. But if you see all the efforts that are being made, he's mentioned Kosase. Kosase has recovered how much so far?
Billions.
80 billion or something? I've been hearing figures, huge figures. We prevented 45 billion from being lost. The other time we were in, what was that district? Sironko. There's another DC there who has taken it upon himself. He says the main problem in his area is drunkenness. He's shut down places, using some crude methods, but people are fixing, people are making their efforts, which are from many angles, that are being made to actually fix problems where they occur.
We need to
capture that. We need to capture
give us some numbers.
Just let me tell you why the problem is. Thank you, Kosasa. You've recovered. But who was responsible for making these decisions? We had the other day the court convicting Obe, Rwamafa, and someone else. And I think the judge put it very clear and said, this whole deal was cooked in public service, I think spiced in Ministry of Finance, and served in Bank of Uganda. Who in Ministry of Finance did this? Who in Bank of Uganda did this? So, Julius, I can hear you. I really don't want you to massage government. And I can hear you. Yes, government. And that is where you need to move to now. I don't think that we need to massage government. Ugandans are hurting.
Now that we are through with the Ministry of Public Service, then we precisely continue to Ministry of Finance and Bank of Uganda, and that is my precisely my point. That some effort has been done. However, a lot more
could be done.
A lot more needs to be done, and that's why we, as civil society organizations, the 5 cycles you are talking about, if, for instance, Uganda Debt Network wasn't around, perhaps now the situation would be much worse. Similarly, if the Auditor General was not around, the situation would be worse. So that bit has to be recognized.
Yes.
But we say that we need to engage more newer gears and overcome some of these ills 100%.
I think Patrick was seated on this side of me the last time I put that same question to him. That at its foundation, Uganda Debt Network had a simple task. Follow through the debt relief, and the moment Uganda was debt-free, you guys would go to look for something else.
That's why we are still around.
We are still around.
So many years later, Patrick is sitting on the right side of me here, and he's reading for me numbers. The estimate, the local estimate and the World Bank estimate of how much money is getting lost through Graft every year. You're giving me numbers of
how much debt we have
accumulated. Julius is giving me how much debt we have accumulated and sustainable, because 45 to 50. Some people have put it at 55% actually. Government will not agree on exactly how much debt
and it doesn't have
and the lending institutions, the World Bank, IMF, and the others. Also,
actually, we haven't also finished the borrowing for the oil refinery and the standard gauge rail.
Yes,
and many more.
You said 250 million. That's our debt level now? Huh?
No. I talked about how much money is lost every year.
Yes.
$150 million every year.
Whose estimate is that?
Uganda National Governance Baseline Survey 2014 report. And then World Bank puts it at 310, slightly higher. That's about 1.2 billion every year. And I was trying to look at this in terms of our budget. For example, the current budget. That's about 5% of the budget lost. I also gave an example of a local agency, which is UNRWA. In 5 years alone, has lost 4 trillion.
It was 8 years.
Over a period of about 7. But even the 5 itself has issues.
Yes.
It has accountability challenges.
I mean, that to me is a very serious challenge. And when you look at the perception reports, that run around, the people think corruption is still increasing. Actually, the Transparency International report says in 2015, actually, corruption increased almost double.
What explains that?
I need to be told.
I think it, we need to qualify that perception of corruption.
Yeah.
I think it's
Of course, the perception also is based on certain parameters.
Yeah, the parameters, interfaces they have with the services,
the reality
police, and
but you,
I mean, quantified,
you are the people investing every day of your lives to go beyond the perception. So what's the reality? Between your debt network and IGG, what's the reality?
The reality is the space within which you can be corrupt in Uganda is narrowing because of the automation that has been introduced.
Automation in
not of IGG, of the payment, you know, Ministry of Finance. He has the terminology saying, it's called single treasury accounts, IFMS, and so on. Because in the past, you know, corruption was actually driven at a very low level. Cashiers, Fridays was a day when people carry sacks of money and distribute. It's no longer possible.
Yes.
You now have to agree with a number of players to get money out of the Bank of Uganda.
The cooking chain you were talking about.
Yes. You have to actually cooperate. And now that's why we've now formed the Directorate of Special Investigation. And we've told them, shut down everything else, focus on the big issues. And right now they have about 4 or 5 cases. Focus, investigate, let's detect where is this graft, who is involved, and so on. So I think, God, if you are worried that when we've only started with the, what was it, where this, with the public service, no, the journey is still on. The journey is still on. Those cases are not over. We are tackling grand corruption because now the space is narrowing. And we know as the
space is narrowing.
We can now target.
The challenge you have is that, as Patrick earlier on said, that you are graduating from, by the way, don't sanitize and call it corruption. It is stealing, it is robbery, like how you find the highway robber. So the robbery now has graduated from millions to billions. So even
I think we arrived at that a long time ago.
So in terms of frequency that George is talking about,
Julius, is that why you're saying?
In terms of the magnitude, even one player can cause.
That's why I was wondering when you started scoring off successes.
The successes are there.
Let's pick this discussion up in a moment. But if you can just hold it. Let's pick this up after a short commercial break. Welcome to this last segment of tonight's Fourth Estate, and we're discussing the journey to middle income. What is the role of corruption and the efforts to fight corruption? We have George Bamgemerere, his Deputy Inspector General of Government. Julius Kapwepwe Mishambi on the other side is from the Uganda Debt Network. Godbert Mushabe is a policy analyst, works with GLIS, Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies.
Yes.
GLIS. And we have Patrick Tumwebaze, who is Executive Director at the Uganda Debt Network. Gentlemen, and it's at this stage we also encourage our viewers to join us and share with us their opinions. I haven't seen the Twitter running. Normally we should be having it, people commenting, and we continue the discussion on and off the air. The bigger question is, we're a country attempting to move to middle income. If we are on a journey, as Julius tries to convince us that we're making that, some people have called it steady progress. We should be comfortable.
Not comfortable.
You have half of this country are children below 15 years, or 15 years and below. You have about 69% of this country are people below 30 years. You have 83% of employable people in this country, or people who should be working, without a job. You have students at Makerere frustrated now, they don't know what will happen. Those who are supposed to join Makerere don't know if they will join. They are waiting. Those who are supposed to graduate in January and join and start master's training, maybe in international universities and elsewhere, are not sure they will be able to do that. You have parents who have paid fees and those who haven't paid their fees yet. They don't know what to do. And people are asking, do you go to middle income status, Patrick? You just arrive there somehow. Being extremely patient, does patience take you to middle income status? So people should be asking the hard questions today.
I mean, you are right. People should be asking hard questions today. But before we went for a break, we had this argument, which Jigas brought about, and the IG thanked him. I think, to me, we have where we're starting from. The legal framework, the other you know, anti-corruption agencies, if we are discussing corruption. And the question you are bringing on board is that we are becoming too impatient. Yes.
We're becoming too patient, actually.
Oh, too patient.
I think we're becoming
We are becoming patient.
we are comfortable.
We are not moving as
where
fast
we
as
are.
we would.
Yes, I think I agree with you when it comes to that. I mean, when you look at, for example, the laws that are in place, the Anti-Corruption Act, the Access to Information Act is not operational.
If you start listing, Patrick, you will not finish them.
There are too many. And then, and
So are the
production becomes a bit, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it. We're becoming too patient. And if it continues like this, I think we're going nowhere, in my view.
What do we need to do?
One, in a view of, for example, fighting corruption, I want to give two things, which maybe nobody has mentioned here. One, in Uganda Debt Network, you asked the question, when we started, we were starting about, you know, advocating for debt relief, and when the debt was given, we're still around. Yes, we're still around. What we are doing is we're empowering communities, and that's proactiveness. You empower the communities to stop the corruption.
That is our point number 5.
Don't
isn't it?
wait for the corruption to happen and then we start moving around. So if the
So look at it.
yes.
Why is it that those are the words I always hear, especially with people, you do capacity building, you do community empowerment, you do community organization, you do
That is so important.
We
Yes.
have even studies as Uganda did and corruption is reduced. Once people know they have the information, because information is power, they can track the budget,
Yes.
they can track the monitoring. That is very, very important. So
what explains what Julius talked about, that previously we were talking about theft in millions. Now we are talking about it in billions. Even the billions don't surprise us. I always use this example. When an army paymaster, I think about 20 years ago, ran away with about 1.8 billion shillings in soldiers' salaries. It made a splash headline.
Yes.
Today, they convict people who have stolen money of pensioners. 168 billion.
Yeah. And life goes on.
It's like 168 billion? We're waiting for the next story, which will be 200 billion. That you put it as a lead in a newspaper, no one will buy the papers that day.
I think also we need to recognize that there is a disconnect between the citizens and the government. Actually, many of the citizens I know, or we know as Uganda Debt Network, they think the government is a virtual organization somewhere. They don't count themselves as government. Now that causes...
So what has your investment... Can you account for your investment in sensitization, in capacity building, in sensitization?
That's what we need to do.
No, I can help you
that's what you've been doing.
I can help you there.
We can account for
We
it.
have the
And
NUSAF 2 program in northern Uganda, in 55 districts. And it's one of the most corruption-free projects in the country. And for the reason which is just...
Or maybe
Uganda Debt
we
Network
have set up...
were the implementing.
Yes,
It was the implementer.
Oh, you're the implementer. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
So you see,
So that's
we have
the
set up
investment
communities.
Accountability.
Yeah,
number one.
communities have been involved, either involved in the design, involved in the implementation. They set up committees and track every shilling.
In
So before a loss
625
happens,
projects.
the matter is escalated to the highest level possible. And sometimes,
Okay, I'm being told that we have some callers we need to bring on.
so
yes,
it's true
okay.
that something is happening. And if we empower the community to monitor projects, and this can be expanded beyond their local projects and say, you are constructing a road or a bridge. Let the community be involved, saying this bridge is going to be constructed in our area. So let us know who is the implementing agency, who is the contractor, how much money is available, what is the quality.
And
so
George,
on.
to add
So that
on,
is- yes.
we did that under NUSAF in northern Uganda in 33 districts, involving 625 sub-projects.
So that is part of
incredible.
I'll share something I've seen done. I'll again refer to India, where they have the equivalent of their parish, or, yes, the parish offices.
Yeah.
They put government projects on a board.
Yeah.
No, not on a board, on the wall actually,
On the
where they
wall.
don't have, and they indicate that if George is supposed to benefit from this government service, this is what he received, this is what he got. So if you're walking by and see that they say you got something which you didn't get, you say, I never got, and then you're able to track. But let's pick a caller. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Yes, sir? Yes, your name and where you're calling from, sir?
Kenneth.
Your name is?
Kenneth from India.
Kenneth, yes. Go right ahead with your question or comment. Keep it brief, please.
Just good evening.
Good evening, sir.
And the team.
Thank you.
Could you turn down the volume of your TV?
Okay.
Yes, please. Then go ahead.
Yeah, what I was saying is fighting corruption in this country is the task. The FGG has tried them as much as possible. One thing that they have been lacking is that they don't have the tribunal. You realize that most of the cases that they are trying to prosecute, cases, for example, of the insanity, and there are so many others, those guys have ended up winning cases because there's no tribunal. And good enough, they have presented it to Parliament. It is something that is being handled. The law is delicious. The law is there are those things called justice. But the issue that is really biting is that most of the corrupt cases in Uganda are not really. I don't know whether the government are taking it as corruption is one of the ways of earning a living, or it has been made very attractive. Because even if you look at the guys who have been implicated in these cases, they have been dealing with billions of
we're struggling, Kenneth, to listen to you.
That's what the challenge is.
Yes.
I think we need, as a government, as people who love this country, to go beyond prosecuting, but recovery, because it will be one of the most effective methods to beat up corruption. Thank
you very much. You're talking about recovery. I saw the DPP talking about going to auction to sell properties of the people who are convicted. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do we have another caller? Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
This is Michael Mwanje from Totera.
Yes, Michael. Keep your question or comment brief.
Most of the government institutions are set up for consumer donor money. The so-called ITD, they are set up for consumer donor money, how government can account for the money. But they don't do the actual work they are supposed to do. Today, as I was reading Observer, was it on Friday, this guy Pablo was talking that there should be a commission of inquiry into the so many commissions of inquiry that have been set up without finding. So, I don't know the findings of the commission set up, they end up setting another one. That's all a consumption of resources.
Thank you. Yes, I'll tell you what Michael is talking about. We have another caller. Hello?
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Pireka.
Yes, please.
Yes, for me, we think of the middle income. There are no strategic investment plans by this government. And I'm very sure that will never come soon.
Okay.
I have a friend of mine who is a state prosecutor, and he told me that criminals facilitate them. So you assume if a criminal facilitates operations of the government, your crime must be false. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, do you have another caller? Yes. Hello. When you're calling us, kindly turn down the volume of your TV set. You don't have to listen to yourself when you're talking to us.
You know what you're talking about. Anyway.
Okay. Who do we have online? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Your name and where are you calling from?
Yeah, can you please protect me if you want to read my because what I'm saying is...
Reduce the volume on your TV set. It's on.
It's off.
Okay, now you can hear you.
Yeah, so what I'm going to tell you is criminal. Can you protect me by not letting you know my name?
If you know it's criminal, please don't say it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
There is a case of an official who was on leave and went to China for operation,
And in the same period, he withdrew money for monitoring the government projects and spent 5 days in the field. Yes, he was in China on an operation because she was big. So can the IGG help us, because they are currently investigating that case, and it's an outright issue which does not even require a day to find out. Someone withdrew money, ate the money, went in the field 3 times a week, yet he was bedridden in China.
Can the person come and see me?
Yeah.
Can the deputy IGG help us on that?
The IGG says
right now they're investigating it.
Can you talk to, can the IGG talk to you now before you get off? The IGG is here.
Yeah, I was just saying that thank you for that information. I would like to invite you to our offices at the Jubilee Insurance Building, 2nd floor, and to come and speak to me in confidence.
Yourself, not any other person.
Yeah, just me. Yeah, just me.
I think the IGG should give you his number so that when you go, you don't get, you don't fail to meet him. You can call. Can you share your number? He needs to call you.
Yeah, but come on, second floor. Second floor.
Second floor.
Second floor, Jubilee Insurance Building.
Okay.
Second floor.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Do you have another caller? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm Kasoma Farouk of Uganda from Highfield think tank.
Please go ahead.
Fighting corruption needs the angelic support because you realize that in Uganda something like 13 trillion is collected a year. Though the tax base is increasing, but on the ground there's lack of transparency and money is not seen on the ground. So we need angelic support. Kasoma Farouk of Uganda.
Thank you very much, Farouk. Do you have another caller? Hello?
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening, Charles.
Good evening, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
This is Benjamin Toye Mchemo,
Benjamin, go right ahead.
calling from Kapchora.
Yes, please.
For me, I think we have a gold medal in corruption. So why can't we try to legalize it and talking about it all the time?
Okay.
We can just try to legalize it so that it be the normal thing. Because this thing is with us. Ugandans, we practice corruption. It is with us. We can try to legalize it so that it is normal.
Benjamin, that's an interesting proposition. But how do you suggest it works? Traffic police officers on the road, especially this Christmas. One is since they deployed traffic on to their credit on that Masaka road, it has stopped being slippery. The road designs have all receded, and I think the ghosts that were there have disappeared. But what do you suggest happens that when you meet a traffic policeman stops you? You just sort him out and you continue. Is that your suggestion, Benjamin?
Do not lose hope.
Okay, I think we've lost him. Let's just pick one call and then we'll come back to studio. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir?
Yeah, I'm JK calling from Rubaga Road.
Yes, JK.
Very interesting interaction. You can't reinvent the wheel. Think or approach to corruption is actually preventing it in the first place. And there are many ways how to do that, which I've got. What happens normally is falsification of documents. Okay?
Yes.
When they do that, then however genuine the document looks like, by the way, those big officers sign on to it, little knowing that it's been falsified in the first place. I've got a solution to that. You have my number. Thank you.
Thank you, JK. I think we need to bring this discussion back into the studio and say our concluding statements. Where do I start?
We could deal with Mr. Mwanje, for instance. I'll just take on Mr. Mwanje and if allowed, moderate, and I just mentioned some 2 cases.
Sure, go ahead.
And that is that just remind Ugandans that around 1993, we opted for divestiture or selling away of public enterprises in Uganda. So government ideally ran out of doing business. The other bit for me is that donor resources to Uganda as a percentage of the national budget have been dwindling. That tells me that it is the Ugandan taxpayer, you and I, the private sector players like NTV, the multinationals, and individuals, NGOs like Uganda Debt Network and the others that are contributing to the coffers of the state, that are contributing our money. Therefore, to that extent, we can't simply give up that the situation has escalated. We have to pay our taxes, but also follow that money. There is no one who is going to do it for us. Certainly the Inspectorate of Government alone, unless we report some of these errors and support them to do their work, we cannot go far. And for me, the other bit is that just look at the case of procurement. Over 80% of the national budget is spent through procurement. And that's where so far you continue to have highest incidences of stealing public funds. If you looked at the Solicitor General's office, just as a case, it's a number of them. It is the kingpin of management of public contracts. What is the level of staffing? In a number of these procurements, the threshold is up to 200 million. Beyond 200 million, that kind of contract is supposed to be administered through the Solicitor General. What is the level of staffing? So that oftentimes you have had to rely as a government on private lawyers and private firms itself causes a lot of challenges. So for me, one of the areas that you and Godba and many of us here have seen the voluminous way of some of these contracts. 2,000 pager report just for one contract versus a given limited of staffing, for instance, at the institution of the Solicitor General. So that is an area that you need to beef up, and also beef up the institution of internal auditing at the various government institutions. That way you can proactively deal with a number of these errors. If you do not do that, we will continue lamenting as Ugandans, but we must overcome this and face some of these challenges squared. Yeah.
Thank you, Julius. Good, but you wanted to disagree on something.
No, I hear Julius really prescribing very, very technocratic administrative things. Because you see, if that was the problem, we shouldn't be having this problem. If the problem of losing billions of money is because the Solicitor General's office has no staff, a serious government would just wake up, put people in the Solicitor General's office. If the problem of losing money is because IGG is not staffed, that's easy to fix. So I really don't want us to reduce this discussion to these technocratic things. You need to look at the architecture. We talked earlier about the proliferation of laws and institutions. If you are going to deal with corruption in this country, you have to have a government that focuses on, we want to reorganize the public administration. Some of the institutions actually should be cut out and closed.
Like and the Minister of Transport.
And like Minister of Public Service, I have never believed that you need to have a ministry whose job is to move files of staff. Public service. That's a ministry you want to close overnight. So essentially you want to have. I think one of the major actions that we need to fight corruption is to start with the government itself. You have to reconfigure government. Remember the corruption.
How many reconfigurations have we gone through?
Remember that the government, the corruption, most of the corruption that happens in parliament, where someone comes and says, we are going to create districts, give this a district, give this a district. That is corruption. The taxpayers have already lost the money. Now that you will not solve by improving the working condition of IGG. You're not solve that. So you get to UNRWA. I know, for example, UNRWA, and I think I'm happy that the parliamentarian says, let's do an inquiry into what UNRWA is doing. because some of the information, and we are still trying to, to understand what's happening there. We know that almost for 2 years now, there is no new procurement of road projects. But yet every year, we are putting in money. The road sector is one of the highly funded sectors. So you want to really look at all these institutions. So really the question for me is not about basic things. You have to deal with the way government operates. I think that we have a bloated government that itself is a problem.
It's an issue. Yeah.
It's a cost. And I think corruption starts from there. So for you to deal with the corruption, you have to start by reorganizing and cutting down government and streamlining these institutions. Because I can tell you, those reports you're saying of the contracts, these lawyers, the cases we read at law school, they are volumes. So reading a contract of 500 pages, it's no big deal. You just need to have people who are committed, remunerated to do that, and there is accountability for not doing it. Because if you are Solicitor General and you have reviewed a contract, either you are a lawyer there, you are a Solicitor General, you've reviewed a contract, and then you hear 28 billion shillings was paid to a fictitious company. Come on. So do you need to go and improve and increase staffing in some agencies? So I think we are really giving this issue. There's something I feel like we are missing in terms of really touching the problem, and
we're addressing it.
And we are more or less like skirting around it. I have also argued that where corruption is now, in fact, the IGG judge can mainly do the massaging. They will try and when you want to report the progress you've made, you'll find the progress. The Auditor General will do the report. But right now, I think that the corruption that we are dealing with, you need political action. It's not going to be just prosecution that you have you've strengthened DPP, whatever. You need political action. I want to be a president, and I give you a ministry, and you are the minister, and money is lost. My business is not used, or money is not used. My business is not whether you are the one who was supposed to use it or you one who stole it.
Yeah.
You have failed in your responsibility as a political supervisor of that ministry. So I expect you to resign or fire you. Yeah. Then the rest, and remember that resignation or firing does not mean that you are criminally liable. No, you have only taken political responsibility. Then the criminal bit, we can deal with that. But the fact that, these guys, all these mega corruption scandals happen, the ministers say, we are not the accounting officer, and then you say, but what were you doing in that ministry? If you are not the accounting officer, you have no responsibility. What are you doing there?
Could you quickly comment about Benjamin? Benjamin from Kakira. He has a brilliant idea. Legalize the damn thing called corruption.
No, I mean, that is really giving up. And I think I don't want to give up on this country. They are either, in many ways, I think they are sane people. They are still people with integrity that the challenge that we have right now is that we have a class of people that have accepted corruption as a culture. And I think I was listening to a video clip from Professor Lumumba from Nairobi Law School, who was saying that the tragedy of Africa is that the young people that you were mentioning are learning from the old people who have accepted the culture. So we are really having that challenge. So that's why I think for me, my view is that we need to work on the political side. We need to work to be able to make sure that, especially for this country, we need to work to help the Bushwa generation retire and relax, and you work to bring about a new generation of leaders, and be careful to be able to look for people who are credible, who have integrity, and who have discipline to come into government.
Let me disappoint you a little. I think it's the IGG who mentioned about it. There is a report that was launched about the perception. It was done by the Aga Khan Foundation on young people's perceptions on corruption in East Africa. And that generation you need to find.
No, that's what
it's going to be extremely difficult, because people think you need to become rich by any means possible It doesn't matter how you become rich.
I guess my point, Charles, is to say that giving up is not an option.
Thank you.
So the evidence tells you this is the problem, so you need to be cautious and deal with it as smartly as you can.
Patrick, JK in Rubaga says you can't reinvent the wheel. And Benjamin says legalize corruption. Can you speak to them?
I think I agree with Godiba, because when I hear what they are saying, it's this situation where somebody is saying, yeah, after all, what can we do?
It's called cynicism.
Yes.
Yeah.
But something else has to be done. Of course, as Godiba said earlier, we need to look at the political side of it. That's very, very important. Before we start going to the structural adjustments, I don't know what. Because also, when you look at how people come into politics, they have to buy their votes to be, and then somehow, that's where corruption starts.
It starts from there,
We need to look at all that and bring it to order before we start now resigning and saying, no,
we legalize everything.
We legalize everything. We can't legalize corruption.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Patrick.
I just wanted to mention one thing also. Yes. Maybe we should not forget the media, because the media is a key player in the fight against corruption. Because they expose, but of course what they need is a certain capacity to do some kind of good investigative journalism, especially on corruption cases, and that would help.
I'll tell you one frustration of the media. There are people who are passionate about exposing these things of corruption. But the moment you splash a headline on a newspaper that is talking about billions stolen, returns are incredible. People don't read those things. I don't know why. People seem to, they're used to these things. If you put a headline,
have gone online.
If you put a headline of, if you put a headline on a newspaper of Bad Black and her church, you're likely to sell more copies than putting a headline on.
That's the attitude I talked about earlier. And that the citizens are now, these messages we're getting from the callers is actually that kind of thing, the I don't care attitude.
And that's why I was questioning your investment in sensitization over the years. Let's end with the IGG. Responding to some of these callers. Yes. Some of them are, like one of them who said he's dealing with a specific case. Someone draws money, doesn't go. The last person I had who did that actually had to struggle. The former guild president of Makerere, who was supposed to go to a trip and ended up, I think, in Nairobi and never went for the trip he was supposed to go to
Portugal.
Yes, we should have gone to Portugal. Wow. Those were days when there were consequences. The guy who took the soldiers' money had to run out of the country. Hasn't been seen up to this day. But today, the people who steal the billions stay around. And life continues like normal. And they walk freely on the street. I have to be sympathetic to the IGG, who walks into his office every morning with his team, and there are all these stories and around you.
No, thank you very much. Starting with the Godba, I think the political question has been answered. In his inaugural address, the president actually took the lead this time. May.
This time?
No, in May, in that short speech. The speech was very brief, but he identified corruption as one of the bottlenecks to moving the economy.
He did from 2006.
And then went ahead to say, to declare the Hakuna Mchezo era. So this is a Hakuna Mchezo. And I think you have to interpret that in the broadest sense possible. That Hakuna Mchezo is we are going to hold people accountable. So politically, the decision has been taken. This is a bottleneck, and it must be confronted. We, who are the players, are also doing our part. We are saying, what is our strategy to deal with grand corruption? Because there are these two types of corruption. There is a grand one, which you've been referring to, that's going to turn into millions to billions, which affects masses. But there's also that petty corruption, which causes frustration on day to day. So we have plans for dealing with this. And then there's a question of efficiency. The truth is, yes, we need to do more to improve efficiency across government, local, central. I mean, just getting people to do what they are supposed to do.
Yeah.
I think that will take care of a lot of the frustrations that a lot of the citizens have, and that's a campaign we have started. We want every ministry, department, agency to set up an inspectorate unit. We want every agency to also have a normal complaints handling mechanism in their units, so that we take that frustration out of the citizen, and then we focus on the big issues of grand corruption. We on our side have set up a unit which is focusing on the big issues. There will be nowhere to hide. There is the will is there. The resources are actually being gathered. We are getting donor support, government support to pursue these big cases. Because and to those who are cynical about the fight and agitating for legalizing, no, the case is the situation is not lost. There is hope. The space is narrowing. There is more awareness. You know why you're saying that? Yeah, the newspapers don't sell. The fact is that yes, there is more awareness in the citizen. Ugandans now know their rights, and that's why it appears as if it's growing, but it's actually not growing. The space is narrowing. Even the people who walk around, some of them pretend to be at liberty. Actually, they are very worried. A lot of people are not sleeping because they're saying somebody is on my tail, following me. So they don't believe that you see them struggling. No, they are actually worried because they are not comfortable at all. They are being hunted down. Corruption is a risky business. So now what we are trying to do is to give ourselves, to enable ourselves to have capacity to confront people and make those people more uncomfortable. Maybe you want them to hide, but actually, we need to have a safe society where we can actually pick them more easily as they struggle. Thank you very much.
And Charles, also, I think quickly the institution of parliament, talking about the politics, I agree with God, but to the extent of politicians, and particularly looking at, say, members of parliament. In the first place, how do they come into the house? In Uganda, ideally it has been through voter bribery. So they invest in courts and want to reap back. If you look at the level of cheating through sitting allowances, somebody comes and signs. The parliamentary chambers should have been expanded. The work should have started by now. It was marred by procurement issues. That is before PPDA. So that alone already shows you that the politicians are an issue to deal with. Of course, the various allowances that you have seen, the 5 million shillings to change their constitution, you remember the 110 million they received at some point for mischief. You remember
they received money for mischief.
Yeah, they do. But also, the motor vehicle loan scheme of members of parliament. Around 1996, when they had just gone through an election in June, and then later on there was a coining of a motor vehicle loan scheme for 284 members of parliament. Which vehicles were supposed to be, government was supposed to give out that facility, but recover it through a given scheme. And instead of members of parliament, you remember the Punjan group, that was the supplier then. So those that should have bought certain types of vehicles as had been agreed with government, first of all, there was inflation of the costs when you look at the invoices that were given by Punjan group then to parliament, and at the end of the day how much was paid for. But also many of them bought tippers, lorries and trucks, and that kind of above all,
given the nature of the roads,
the payment itself was a problem. So it is that kind of culture by politicians that has filtered through up to where we are. However, as Ugandans, we cannot simply let go. We have to
and my bigger question is,
give out our
sometimes I want to be sympathetic with the politicians, the political leaders, that if the right amount of pressure is not being exerted by the citizenry, the people who vote for them, then you can't expect them to behave any better. So where do you put your investment? In condemning them or in mobilizing the citizenry in a way they can actually make the demands that they need? And the example I gave, that unfortunate accident, and the many accidents that happen every day. There was an accident, I think, involving a Jaguar bus. Is it Jaguar bus? There was a bus that burnt on the... No, there's a link that overturned somewhere near Kenjojo. There is a bus link that burnt on the road somewhere. I hope people survived. Is the question that once you are in a situation when you cannot get your preferred service, then you realize that any misinvestment, any action that you took thinking, for me, I have an insurance card, it will take care of me, I can be airlifted and taken anywhere, disappears in that moment when you don't have the capacity to enforce it. Why all of us need to invest in those general resources, general services that provide for all of us equally. Gentlemen, our time is out. We need to get out of here. I think we have actually overstretched our time. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for making time for the show.
Thank you.
Godba talked about institutions that function. I want to mention, I think, at least two. I think it's more expensive today to try and get a passport the way people used to by paying somebody to help you get it.
Yes.
Things can change.
I think the men and women at that immigration department are doing their job. And it's more, if someone put it to actual in money terms, it's more expensive to go the other way than to go the straight way.
Yes, exactly.
And I think the other institution,
and even you as a client, when you go there, you feel like you have been efficient. They have made you efficient by not spending there a lot of time.
Yes.
Yeah, which I think is incredible.
Thank you.
I think it's fair to give credit where it's due. And the other institution would be, it's also it's under Ministry of Works, I think.
I think
the guys who do.
I should give you the best one, I think. For me, the best is the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. The way they have transformed, you go to the bureau, you actually look at young men and women. They are all like a generational group. You look at the way they are moving, the way they handle your requests and whatever. It's amazing. It's amazing. And you keep on asking and say, but why can't government operate this way?
Yeah, but you have so you can see the
so you think this is spreading?
How to expand those islands of efficiency? The other one would be a group like the ones who handle driving licenses. Yes, people walk in there and they will get their license when they tell you come back after a week. They'll have their license in a week, and there is minimum.
So George is telling us that this is spreading.
It's
so
working.
We'll keep praying.
Make it faster. So much better.
And some of those proposals actually came from the civil society, looking at the particular case of the passports and creating an alternative way.
I am about to become corrupt, keeping the production team waiting long after the show should have ended. So I think time efficiency is also. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for making time for the show tonight, and thank you very much to you all our viewers for joining us tonight, and always, especially those of you who managed to get through and call. I get many complaints of people trying to call in and they can't get through. So apologies to you. Sometimes technical issues can't allow you to get through, but start calling early. Thank you very much to our production team that stays up late to deliver the show to you. For me, it's a good night.
Okay.